Play at Novibet.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle in association with Novibet. As usual, I've Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward here, and we're going to have a look at all the things that happened in racing over the last week. Starting off with the Grand National yesterday. Myself and Emma were both there in Fairyhouse. Great day, Emma, wasn't it?
Yeah, great day. Great atmosphere on the track. A really young crowd around. I don't know the official attendance figures, but I'd imagine they have to be really delighted with it. Like even with the chanting at the time of the national, yeah, everyone just seemed to be having a great time. And yeah, it was in fairness a great show put on by Boyle Sports because by Fairyhouse, sorry, because I think like even queues for bars and stuff were pretty okay. I was talking to people who were down there, and yeah, facilities seem to be good, and yeah, great racing on top of it, I'd say. Even despite the weather, I'd say everyone had a great day.
Yeah, rained all day, and yet people were in great spirits. Like I thought that was great to see. It was almost like a football match, wasn't it, with singing in the crowd before the national and during some of the other races as well. Crowd singing away tunes in the stand. You don't often see that, Johnny, at a race meeting in Ireland.
No, I wasn't at Fairyhouse now, but I spoke to a couple of people yesterday who were, and I suppose there's kind of a good and a bad aspect to this. We need to get people racing, but I wouldn't be mad at the idea of young people racing who are probably quite ill-educated, cheering a horse falling at a fence in front of them, and given how much danger that entails to a jockey and obviously the horse as well, and that aspect of it, which is kind of almost like a yobbish football type culture. Not really sure I want to see that seep into racing, and and it's great to have such a good crowd at Fairyhouse, and it's obviously hard to get people racing now. And I do wonder how many actually genuine racing people were there versus the young people who need to get into the game. But certain aspects of that and some of the reports I heard about the behaviour of some of the young people at the race would slightly worry me.
Yeah, it's always going to be a case, isn't it? Look, young people tend to let their hair down, and that's what they do. And look, I suppose the ultimate thing is, no one got hurt, and they all had a good day. That's a great thing, and hopefully some of them will come back and they'll mature into it as they get older and they learn more about it. What do you think?
I think one thing they should maybe do, like I've gone to races like that where you're just going with your friends for a good time, like student days and all that, and you could literally be inside a marquee and like the race could go by and you wouldn't have a clue because it's kind of like you're at a pub, really. I think like
that's exactly
maybe
what I heard then.
Yeah, but I think if you're inside a marquee, they should announce, maybe the DJ or whoever's playing should announce, horses in the parade ring, in case people want to go out and see it, because the day can just fly you by, and it's not really like you're even at the races half the time if you're on a day like that. So it's great getting young people there, but like and in fairness, all fair play to Fairyhouse. I think and Cork as well had a great crowd on Sunday as well, a really young crowd, kind of the same thing again. But like just to get those kind of young people out watching the horses as well and kind of understand what's going on, maybe like just inside in the marquee say, horses in the parade in there, announce a couple of things about it, and might tune them back into the racing side of it as well as just having a good day out.
Yeah, that's one thing you mentioned there, just about announcements. One of the things that used to drive me mad going racing on a regular basis, because you'd be there every day, was the fact that the parade ring announcing, it goes on interminably all day long. There's announcements about all sorts of things, and it's a constant noise in the background almost. Whereas, as I say, like they try to do this at some of the meetings before racing, having a tipping thing in the parade ring or whatever. I'm not sure that sort of stuff really works. I agree with you about people in the bars. They do need to know there's a race coming up, and maybe that's the more important information, is that stuff, horses leave the parade ring, race will start in 10 minutes, whatever it is that needs to let people know and focus on the fact there is a race about to start, because you can get lost in it all right in those days. But anyway, let's go to the big race.
I actually totally disagree with you on that. I think the parade ring stuff at the race meeting is totally underused. Where I think they should go through every horse when you're racing. The parade ring should have a roving announcer who basically speaks to connections before racing and goes through every horse, gives every owner his or her day in the stump, and before racing speaks to connections kind of with a roving mic in the parade ring, where you get little tidbits of information to give the person who goes racing, who is basically an endangered species, something of a benefit as opposed to those people who are watching at home, which is increasingly the case. So that you actually not only do you see the horse in the flesh when you're at the race in the parade ring, but when you go racing, you get information that simply is not available at home, because I go racing a fair bit, and the amount of people just have stopped going racing now is really, really worrying.
But I don't think it's because of a lack of information necessarily. Like, look, it is maybe about information, but it's this constant droning on of the loudspeakers going all day long, telling you all sorts of information that you don't really want to know if you're an ordinary person going to the races. That's what I think. I think there's too much of that. Color changes, important information, stewards' inquiries, whatever. Yes, but I don't think you need to. I think there needs to be a different place where you inform people that maybe it's one bar in particular or some place within the race course, but just doing it out across all the loudspeakers all day long, I think is not necessarily the thing. You don't get it at other sporting events in the same way. I know it's a slightly different situation maybe, but you wouldn't get that at a rugby match, would you? You wouldn't get it at a GA match. Okay, they're telling you the odd time about a lost child or whatever, come and collect them from the office at the back or something like that. But just in general terms, there needs to be, but when there's an announcement made, it needs to be something important, whatever that is. And we do have the commentaries in the races, which are across all aspects of the track and everything else. But I agree, in some of those bars, you wouldn't even hear the commentary necessarily. Anyway, let's look at the big race, right? We'll go on to that. Intense Raffles. Thomas Gibney having the winner second time in 10 years? Was it 12 years? Lion na Bernie won it in 2012. This was a hell of a training performance. It's probably a hell of a horse. What do you make of that, Emma? You backed it, I know. So
I did, yeah. I think it was kind of just a great kind of win for racing, Irish racing in general, I suppose, because the story behind this horse is brilliant. I think Thomas Gibney hadn't had much interaction with Simon Monier and Isaac Swade until I think they were inquiring about a horse called Velvet Elvis, I think, and I think that whatever deal they were trying to negotiate fell through, but they just kind of thought he was a good operator, I suppose, in a way, and decided to sell him this horse. And even just the breeding of Intense Raffle, he's a homebred by them, bred in France out of Una Artiste, who won the Fred Winter back in 2012. And I think she actually started off the Double Green partnership all the way back then. I think she was the one that got Isaac Swade involved with Simon Monier's horses. So I think just a great story all around, and it just kind of shows Thomas Gibney, when these big owners send a horse to a smaller-ish trainer, I suppose he runs kind of 30, 40 horses a year, I suppose. He can get the job done just as well as Willie Mullins. And we've seen, they obviously the Double Green have great success with Willie Mullins in Ireland as well, but they kind of have seen the value of Irish racing, and even the smaller trainers, they're not afraid to send a good horse to a smaller yard, and it's paying off massively here because, this Intense Raffles, I suppose, it was kind of a guessing game for the handicapper, what kind of mark to put him on after 2 runs in Fairyhouse, novice chases, small field events. Off America 140, I suppose hindsight's great, but he looked really well in, and I think the trainer was really confident in where he'll go from now. He could be a real Grade 1 horse next year. I think they're going to try him in a Grade 1 novice at Punchestown. And look, you never know, he could even develop into possibly a Gold Cup-ish type of horse next year, I suppose, depending how he copes to that step up into graded company. But yeah, I suppose he made a couple of mistakes jumping wise, but only a 6-year-old, you'd imagine there should be loads of progression in him yet.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. Only 6 and likely enough raced as well. I know he had a few runs in France, but it's only his 4th start in Ireland, 3rd start in Ireland. What do you make of him, Johnny? He's a fair horse, and it was a hell of a performance from Johnny Slevin to get the ride as well. Daryl Jacob injured, their normal jockey. That was a right one to pick up, wasn't it?
Yeah, and for both trainer and rider to have 2 winners in the Irish National at this stage of their careers, with plenty more to come, is really outstanding. And this race, for whatever reason, and I can't really put my finger on it, but this race seems to fly against the face of the trends of national hunt racing, because the small guy can still win. And Tom Gibney to win it twice. You look at Dermot McLaughlin in recent years, Doc Love winning it, Motherway Yard winning it, small yards that you wouldn't associate with races as big as this. And I was going to watch Dundalk, I think it was in January on a Wednesday. I was going into the local to have a couple of drinks and watch Dundalk, and completely randomly Tom Gibney was in the pub, and I said, "What are you doing here?" Turns out one of his best mates is an estate agent beside me, so he'd come in for a cup of tea. And Tom, I think his daughter's, it was her birthday that night, and they were having a few drinks in Dublin. But he'd actually arrived back from the airport, and he was telling me, "I brought a horse over to, I think it was in Haydock, he was going to run. And I woke up this morning and they called off the race meeting. I think it was due to frozen temperatures, and just telling me the story of the national season with cancellations." And he was a bit exasperated about it all. He said, "I have this horse, and it's actually for the Monier Sway partnership." And I said, how would you get a horse with them? And he told me the story, and how we'd gotten a text, and it went from there or whatever from one of the owners, and he was bringing him over to England to, I don't know, to get a mark or to see how we get on. Anyway, that horse was intense. Raffles. I was at Fairyhouse in the first day that he ran for Tom Gibney. He was very impressive. But the second day he ran in a race he won by 40 odd lengths. We talked about the handicapper later on. Basically, he got £13 for that, and the reason he ran in the race was to get into the Irish National. As it turned out, with what wasn't actually the classiest renewal of the race in relative terms, he would have gotten in off 127. He ended up getting in off 140, which was £13, which, like, nearly a stone at that round is a staggering difference. So I'd say he was a little bit worried last week. It was like, even though we didn't know it at the time, have I kind of lost the Grand National here? And JJ Stebbin, like, what can I say about him to win the race again and after the mistake the horse made? He's a jockey that I've taken more notice of since that brilliant interview he did in the Racing Post with Patrick Mullins about his style of riding, which he said is quite a flat style. But horses really kind of, they just go for him. And for him to pick up the Royal, I do feel sorry for Darrell Jacob, because obviously he's developed this partnership. I think he really, really likes this horse. So I got a great vibe off him the first day that he rode him at Fairyhouse. But, you know, racing is about, you know, the smaller person winning. And Tom Gibney, who's an absolute gentleman, ultimately, you know, he's had horses taken off him as well that have gone to Gavin Cromwell, as and John McConnell, some of the Kieran's horses, and owners that, you know, move horses on. Trainers have to deal with that. But now he's developed a partnership with this duo that you'd imagine is going to actually just take off from here. And as Emma says, like, this horse, bit like I know the way you're thinking when the handicap at Cheltenham, off the mark that they won off similar marks, they're clearly going cup candidates down the line.
Yeah, it has to look at that, doesn't it? And you'd have to think he's going to get a couple more horses from those owners, wouldn't you? It'd be a shock if they didn't send another one to him at some stage in the next couple of months. But looking at another thing here, you touched on it there, the handicapping and how it works. Look, Intense Raffles, it was hard to know how good that horse is. No one could really have known in advance how good he is. We still probably don't know how good he is or what his handicap mark will be after yesterday's race. 140 wins off. He's obviously a lot better than that. It's a question of how much the handicapper puts him up, and we'll see where he is by the end of the season. I suppose he looks like a horse that could certainly be a 160 plus horse going into next year, I would have thought. But looking at another side of this was the runner-up in the race, Any Second Now. There's a bit of controversy over his handicap rating, and I certainly can see why. So I think myself at this stage, I think the IHRB should certainly bring in their handicappers, have a chat with them, review what has gone on, and then maybe make some sort of a public statement about it, because I find it baffling, and I've been someone who follows handicaps all my life. I've a good stead in it. That's what I like. I'm having a bet. I like to have a bet in a handicap, trying to work out which horses are well in or not, and so on. But as I say, Intense Raffles, it's very hard to work him out because he's unexposed, and you can be a blot on a handicap. But a horse like Any Second Now, fully exposed, he's a 12-year-old as well. He's placed in 2 English Grand Nationals. He ran in Navan just over 12 months ago in a Grade 2 race. He was rated 160 and he wins it. He goes then and runs in the Aintree Grand National again and pulls up, fair enough, off a rating of 167, which is an English rating. But on his Irish rating of 160, his last appearance in Ireland over fences was that win in Navan in a Grade 2 off a 160. When he reappears this season, he comes back £10 lower, 150. For no apparent reason, he's dropped to a 150. Then he's one run and he gets dropped another £2. He runs again down the field, dropped £4. Then another run, dropped £4 over fences. So he ends up £20 lower than he was when he won a Grade 2 race in Navan just over 12 months ago. That seems astonishing to me. And what I can't understand is it solely down to his age of being 12? Is that why he was dropped so much, or what else is it? Because the horse that finished 2 places behind him in yesterday's race, a horse called Frontal Assault, he's another exposed handicap chaser. He's a 9-year-old owned by Gigginstown. And he won, his last win was in a chase in October 2022. So it's whatever that is, a year and a half ago. How long is that? How long ago is that? October 24 is 2 years. So it's a year and a half ago. He won off 142. He comes out the next day, still 142. That was a conditions chase, a novice chase he'd won. He gets beaten 20 lengths, stays off the same mark. He comes out the next day beaten 31 lengths, stays off the same mark. Comes out the next day beaten 13 lengths, drops £1. Comes out the next day beaten 55 lengths, dropped £1. Then he finishes last of 3 in a conditions race. He goes on and on and on. He comes along 11 runs later. He hasn't won a race and he's dropped a total of £7, having having lost 11 times. He goes in the National, he finishes 4th. So taking it into account, he's beaten 6.5 lengths by Any Second Now, who finished 2nd. Any Second Now had been dropped 20 pounds in a shorter period for a lot less runs. Your man has Frontal Assault dropped 7 pounds. He finishes 6.5 lengths behind him. So, like, realistically here, there's a big difference in how those two horses have been treated by the handicapper. Now, look, I understand it's not an exact science. And then when you take into account as well, there has to be some discretion for the handicapper because, you know, oh, that horse mightn't have liked that trip. It wasn't the right trip, I don't think, or the ground was wrong for him. So you can see why they would be making a subjective decisions on some of these horses. But overall here, there's such a discrepancy here. It's very hard to see how these two horses have been treated so differently by the handicapper. What do you think, Johnny?
I actually found it staggering, to be honest, because like handicapping is it's not an exact science, obviously. I think they really need to use more data for handicapping, you know, race speeds, what the actual horse did in terms of, you know, consistency of performance and all that. And I know he's an old horse, but this was a staggering drop. Like, you know, I find that in Britain, they're kind of more inclined to drop horses very quickly than they are in Ireland. And, you know, you look at some of the Barney Curly horses that have dropped down the years, quite staggering. But you don't get this in Ireland. And, you know, he's an old horse. That wasn't to say he was kind of dramatically losing ability. And as much as, you know, the handicapper will make an allowance for older horses, I don't remember any example like this in Ireland, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't either. And just looking at it here, if you take the way we've two horses there, Any Second Now drops 20 pounds. He wins 100 grand yesterday for finishing 2nd. Frontal Assault, after his 11 runs, he's dropped 7 pounds. He wins 25 grand. So there's a difference of 75 grand the handicapper has ultimately made here in prize money going in different directions, because there's no doubt if Frontal Assault had been dropped 20 plus pounds for his 11 runs, he'd have finished ahead of Any Second Now. He'd have won the 100 grand and whatever else would have happened. What do you think, Emma? Do you think they need to look at this or at least explain what has happened or why they've done what they've done?
Yeah, I think you'd need some kind of an explanation anyway. Like if it does come down to age, I mean, look, I think that's fair enough. I have no problem with older kind of exposed horses being dropped through the weights because, you know, if you have a horse there, even at a lower level, if they're coming to 8 or 9 and they've won a couple of races, it can be really, really hard to even, you know, persist with them because they're so high in the handicap. And like Johnny said, in general in Ireland, it's really, really slow to get back down. And maybe it comes down to age. I mean, look, seeing a 12-year-old being able to keep competing in Irish national, I think that's good. But I think, you know, like the likes of Frontal Assault, like he's only 9, Any Second Now he's 12, but he's just as exposed. I mean, like you were saying, you were going through his form there. He'll have to come down the handicap to be able to really, you know, have a crack at one of these big handicaps again. And just because, you know, he's a couple of years younger doesn't exactly mean that he's not improving. He's probably reached his nearly limit in the handicap, and he'll have to come down a bit more before he can have a crack at the likes of an Irish national again. So I think, yeah, like you said, it's not an exact science handicapping. It is kind of subjective opinions, I suppose, at times with different conditions in different races and stuff like that. But I have no issue with older horses getting dropped, but I think, you know, all horses have to be kind of treated equally in a way. It can be really frustrating sometimes when you have an older horse and, you know, they're getting dropped £1 for a poor run, and then you see another horse getting dropped £4 or £5 for a similar one. It can become a little bit disillusioning, I suppose, for connections. But in general, I think, you know, the way they do it in the UK maybe might be better for the older horse, or they come down quicker, whereas it can be tough here. And yeah, I mean, if it was the same across the board for everyone, I wouldn't really have any issue with it, to be honest.
Yeah. Ultimately, I suppose they're all paying the same training fees and entry fees and jockey fees and everything else and farriers and the whole lot, each of those horses. So everyone should be treated equally ultimately. And there seems to be definitely a disparity there between those two. Anyway, we'll move on. Nina Carberry, she was a big presence in Fairyhouse yesterday. She was there campaigning for her new European election, and there was also a full page ad in the race card yesterday from Fine Gael wanting you to vote for her as well. What about this, Emma? Are you politically minded? I didn't think Nina was till I saw she's up for election, so I don't know.
I would not particularly, I suppose. I was surprised, to be honest. I think it was announced, was it last week, that she was running for it. I'd imagine she'd probably get in. Like, she'd be such a kind of well-known and kind of well-liked public figure, I suppose, around those parts. But yeah, it's very random. I didn't see that one coming at all. And yeah, she was going around Fairyhouse with Simon Harris Taoiseach up there yesterday, and I think Leo Varadkar was there as well. So making an impression on on the race scores. But yeah, I mean, look, sure, wish her the best of luck. But it was not. I didn't see that one coming up this year, to be honest.
No, me neither. Johnny, what do you make of it? You'd be hot on this political thing, but just in general terms, like, what are Fine Gael doing? Ultimately, I didn't know Nina had much of a background with political stuff. I'm not sure she actually does, but she's a very nice girl. She's very presentable, and she'd be a great representative for racing if she did get into Europe and within the political sphere, because she's obviously rubbing shoulders with all the top brass now, which is a good thing from the racing point of view. But like they put Maria Walsh went up in the last election. She's gone up again as a Fine Gael candidate. Rosa Tralee winner. Like it's hard to see where it's coming from the political sphere. You'd think you'd need a bit more nous in the political area to be going for Europe representing us. What do you make of it, Nina? Do you think she'll get in first off?
Yeah, Vinny, I did a piece on politics lately, and I think it's very, very hard for you to get into politics now because of the social media abuse and all of that. So it's a really kind of cool for Fine Gael to get Nina. She's I didn't know she was politically minded either, to be honest, but she's done outstandingly well since she left racing, and she's actually become the most famous of the Carberries. It's actually probably a bit of a coup for Fine Gael to get her, and racing probably does actually need people in high places now. I don't think it's quite as the way it used to have in government. So the very best of luck to Nina. As you say, I didn't know she was politically minded, but to get into politics now, you don't necessarily need to be politically minded. You just need to have a very hard neck.
Yeah, Davy Russell. He could be another one, could he? He was also Dancing with the Stars and all the rest out of it. So he could be our next one we see going up for election. I'd say there's going to be a big change in the next election anyway, with lots of independents going up and all sorts of individual stances against the main three political parties. So you never know who we might see. Ruby Walsh, Ted Walsh, they could all be out in the next one. Anyway, move on to more racing stuff. Constitution Hill, another disaster of a week for poor old Nicky Henderson. It's just not going his way, is it? At least the horse, it looks like he's over his colic scare. He's back at home, but he's not going to run for the rest of the season. It's been a disaster, Emma, has it, for poor old Nicky?
Yeah, it's going to be problem after problem so far for poor Constitution Hill. He's had a rough old season of it now. And look, he didn't get surgery, so you'd imagine it probably wasn't overly serious. So I think he's back at home now, and I think they left him out in the field and be back for next year, which is a pity. I think we were all kind of looking forward to the possibility of him coming to Punchestown. But I suppose with a scare like that, they were always going to mind him after it. And lucky it wasn't too serious, because if the colic got too serious, they would have operated, I'd imagine. So it's probably maybe a precautionary trip to the hospital more so than anything. But good to see he's back and recovering well, because he would. He's a loss to Punchestown, but hopefully he'll be back to 100% next year.
Yeah, and even without him, you'd like to think some of the other Nicky Henderson horses will travel to Punchestown, but that can't be certain at the moment either, the way things are in the yard. He's only had one winner, I think, since the start at Cheltenham, which for a big stable like that's a very poor run, isn't it? 4% return or something on his runners so far, and he's Aintree coming up in a couple of weeks as well. What do you think, Johnny? Do you think they'll turn the corner this season with the rest of the Henderson horses, or would you be a little bit wary?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing him. I thought it would have been amazing for Punchestown. I was only talking to Sean Draper last weekend. Obviously, they were very hopeful. Maybe Sergino might come over, but you wonder at this stage, Vinny, will Nicky just kind of put a line through this season in general and just try to get the horses back for the start of next season? And as much as we've slagged them for the campaign, and I have anyway, Constitution Hill, this is very, very worrying. And he's probably the best jumps horse I possibly have ever seen. And I desperately hope for Nicky we see him back next season, but you would have to be a bit worried that it's just been a really, really tough few months for the yard.
Yeah. The other thing as well, I suppose, it does shine a little light on this whole thing of just having a horse for Cheltenham and keeping them wrapped in cotton wool for it. If your horse is well and able, just put them out there and run them. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Because you can never know what's going to happen a week, a month, a year in advance of how they're going to get on. But anyway, move on to other things from last week. Big flat racing. That was the big one. We did the Dubai World Cup meeting. We'd one Irish winner, Tara London, won a 2-miler. The other thing with that is, I couldn't believe this when I was just reading some of the reports on it. Tara London winning. Michael Tabor was there. It was his first ever visit to Dubai. I just can't believe that. I thought he would have been there more often than I've had hot dinners at this stage. But first visit. Anyway, Tara London wins for them. Auguste Rodin was another disappointment. He's a funny horse, isn't he? backed off the board 2-1. I think it was 9-4. I saw in a place or two in the morning. Backed into 5-4 favourite. Trails in last. Hard to know what to make of that. Johnny, you'd be one for those flat horses. Tell me about that now. Just Tower of London. He wins a Grade 2 over 2 miles. They're talking about maybe stepping him back in trip as well. But is he an Ascot Gold Cup horse, or will we be looking at middle distances?
Yeah, I'm about to do a podcast after this with Dan McDonald when he was 40 years of age. I got him a betting docket for the Derby, and there were 2 horses to choose from. There was Auguste Rodin and Tower of London, and you can be pretty sure which one I picked. Now he has gone on to be a more durable horse than the other one, and he probably will stay well. He's kind of one of the last good Galileos, but like Auguste Rodin now, as a stallion prospect, this was devastating really, because he's run 3 absolute shockers now in his last sort of 12 months, and mixed that obviously with some excellent performances. But there would be a lot of speculation as to why he stayed in training, I suppose, and all of that. And Meydan has, unfortunately, I suppose, had to kind of defend the horse again, even though he didn't really have any explanation for the run. But as a stallion prospect, obviously, you couldn't bank on him at all. Aidan would argue that that they've started to run their horses more often to prove that they can stand up to scrutiny and stand up to a tough schedule. He clearly can't, and as such, how would he start now as a stallion? It'll be an awful lot less than it might have for his CV when you look at both parts of it.
Yeah, as it stands at this minute in time, they'd have been better off retiring them, wouldn't they, at the end of last season? But there you go. That's the roll of the dice you do in that game, I suppose. And then again, he can probably bounce back like he did last year. He's some bouncing ball, or at least he was last year. One bad run can be, he could look sensational the next day. The other thing to note from the Dubai World Cup was Laurel River, Tygo Shea winning 8.5 lengths in the big race. Says he's never ridden a horse as good as him. I can imagine. It's a great win for Tygo Shea, an Irishman flying the flag abroad. And then the other one was Friday. We had 23 Irish horses went over for the all-weather championship finals in the UK. 3 meetings: Lingfield, Newcastle, Chelmsford. An Irish winner at each one. The main one to pick out of it was Elegant Man, Adrian Murray, who's had a good start to the season. He's got some very good horses too. David Egan rode the winner. Picked up 100,000 sterling for winning a race there at Newcastle. What do you make of that, Emma? Did you watch much of that all-weather racing?
To be honest, it kind of flies over my head a small bit, those that all-weather championship. But yeah, I mean, the prize money is incredible, really. Like when you look at it, like 100 grand to win an all-weather race on a Friday night. I mean, it's better than finishing second in the Irish National. It's some prize to land, in fairness, and the Irish trainers didn't leave it fly over their heads. Like 23 of them travelled over and picked up some nice prize money there. So yeah, it was I suppose look, I wouldn't be really high on my schedule for the year, but yeah, it was nice. They targeted it well, I suppose, the Irish horses, and yeah, the Ammo horses are running really well. It's a great start for the year for David Egan and for Adrian Murray as well. Like you said, he had a good 2-year winner last week as well. But just in Auguste Rodin as well, I think, like, I mean, you'd have to imagine he probably wasn't fully primed for it either, was he? Like he ran until the Breeders' Cup last year in October. Like if they were planning a campaign like that again, like you'd imagine they'd leave something on him. Although, like, I know traveling over there, he would have been fairly ready, you'd imagine. But he's just so hit or bust. Like, I think every first start of the year for him, he's just blown out completely. It's kind of it's as if maybe when his chance is gone, maybe he minds himself slightly. But like when he's good, he's very good. But to be honest, I wouldn't be ruling him out over it just because did it in the Guineas last year when he came back and put in some massive performances again. But he's definitely probably not the most straightforward one Aidan's ever trained. But like when he's good, he's very, very good.
Yeah. One other thing here, Johnny, you might be able to shed some light on this for me. There's a lad rode a winner in Chelmsford for Dennis Hogan the other day, May night one. Keithy Kennedy. Do you know much about him? 12th winner. He looks to be a hot property on the all-weather this winter.
Yeah, I spoke to John McConnell about him because he's been riding a bit for him, and obviously just apparently he looks very, very good. I actually don't know what his background is, and I may have looked into this before and just forgotten about it, but he's, I think the standard of flat jocks in Ireland is outstanding, the young lads. This lad is well up there, and I loved kind of earmarking a young flat jockey who's good value for his claim, and he's certainly that. Yeah.
He'll be one to look forward to now on the flat when he gets onto the grass, see how he performs there, because it's one thing on the all-weather, it's a whole different game, I'd imagine, on the turf, but sure, it's very soft ground, and we haven't got a huge amount of racing this week either. Quiet enough week before we head into Aintree the following week when it'll all liven up again for us from a national hunt point of view. Anyway, looking back at last week, Emma, have you one to follow that you think will win again? Hopefully he'll win again soon.
Yeah, I'm going to give my own horse, actually. He ran in the bumper in Cork on Sunday. Get a motive is his name. He actually Petty got a nice little boost over the weekend as well. Ardira Rue would be a sister of the dam, and she would have listed race. So it's a good weekend for him overall. He was second in a Cork bumper. Robbie Gagan, who rode him, thought he might have won if he had something on his outside. He just kind of hung over the track a small bit, but should come on an awful lot for him. I'd say, if you go for another bumper, he could take a bit of beating, I'd say.
Little nibble at him in the betting as well at the weekend. 66s into 33s. Someone got a couple of quid, yeah.
Someone did.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny? Do you see one you liked?
Slightly different type. I have a feeling, I've actually none to Dundalk about this. I think Dundalk is going to start staging more races this year because of the state of the ground on the flat. And I think trainers will want to run horses there as well because the ground is so bad. Aidan O'Brien ran agenda in a maiden there last week, was on the Wednesday. It looked really strong maiden, some good horses in it in behind, and he absolutely bolted up. And he made his debut in a back-end maiden on 14 different rounds. But see him running in the Irish Derby, and I think this lad could be very, very promising. He still looks very raw.
Very good, yeah. One that I saw from yesterday, I just thought it was very impressive on the day, was Journey With Me. Henry de Bromhead won a grade 2. Beat Appreciated 9 lengths. Now, that didn't look likely turning in. I thought Appreciated was traveling very well, and he's a previous Supreme winner. And he's got some good form early in the season with Faster, Slow, and Galloping Deschamps. So it's a fair performance from Journey With Me. He's had problems as well. Funny thing with him is he's fallen twice as a novice over fences, which is a bit unusual for one of Henry de Bromhead's. But when he's good, he's very good. He's a bit of an Auguste Rodin, I'd say, and they seem to have the horse right now. So it'll be interesting to see if he turns up in Punchestown. Now, the other thing with him is he was bought at a Derby sale for $5,000. That's a nice buy. Whoever bought him at the time before he went and won his point to point. There's always someone making a few quid somewhere. Anyway, let's hope you do too over the coming week and the coming season on the flat and everything else. And thanks for watching. And we should be back again next week on the Monday rather than the Tuesday, because we're a day later this time because of the bank holiday. So we'll see you all again next week. Do gamble responsibly. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do by clicking the buttons below. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.